Okay, hello and welcome to the video number 16 from the Cisco CCNA 200-301 exam preparation. And this video is about 20 questions of discussing the questions that matters September and October update for this series. This is about to be the video before the last of this series of 2020 questions, and we will start right now discussing about 20 questions as I said. Okay, these will be only simple questions and I think you will like them. An engineer must establish a trunk link between two switches. Okay, so right now I have two switches, switch number 1, switch number 2. By default, my ports are accessed to the default VLAN number 1, and I am the owner of switch 1 and I would like to make this link as trunk. The neighboring switch is said to be trunk or desirable. Actually, desirable is part of trunk because in trunk ports, your port is either trunk or is either desirable or auto. So it seems that this port is already desirable. So my port, just by waking up, by starting negotiations, whether it was desirable or auto, it will join the trunk and the trunk link will be established. So what action should I take? Configure switch port non-negotiate will deny becoming trunk in the future totally. Configure switch port mode dynamic desirable could be, and configure switch port trunk dynamic desirable could be, but the perfect answer here would be configure switch port mode dynamic and auto. Dynamic will be starting the auto negotiate. Auto will declare itself as it's an auto port because the other port is desirable, and thus it will be the perfect situation in trunking as well as in pack P when you have two ports. One of them is desirable, the other one is auto, and thus pack P will happen, port channel will happen, and here trunk link will happen. Question number 2, which type of information resides on a DHCP server? So when I access a DHCP server, what type of information should I see? A list of the available IP addresses in a pool. I will definitely see a private pool with some IP addresses inside. A list of public IP addresses and their corresponding names, and names here refer to resolving. So this is a DNS server. A username and a password, definitely a AAA server, and a list of statically assigned MAC addresses. No, not on a server side, so this will only be A. And I hope that such questions will not take from you more than a minute in the exam, because you have almost 120 minutes to solve about 100 questions. So some questions should take less than a minute so that you can spare some seconds for the other more difficult questions. What is a function of a wireless controller, EWLC? To register with a single access point that control traffic between wired and wireless endpoints. Actually, what controls the traffic between the wireless and wired is a switch. Use SSIDs to distinguish between wireless clients. Yes, this can be done by creating multiple SSIDs to be pushed and transmitted through every single access point to the clients can be done. Send the LWAPP packets to access points. I have no idea what is that, but I'm sure of B. And monitor activity on wireless and wired LANs. How can a controller monitor the traffic of a wired LAN? Do you know which type of controllers does that? APKM. We have talked about that in chapter 7. It can control and monitor both wireless and wired LANs. It's a controller but does both, not that small cheap WLC that can do that. So B would be correct here. Okay, what role does a hypervisor provide for each virtual machine in a server virtualization? You have a server, you have installed a hypervisor upon it, and now your hypervisor is creating multiple virtual machines. So what's really that hypervisor doing, and what is a hypervisor? Hypervisor, according to chapter 1 in this course, was software, operating system, like Microsoft Windows operating system or Linux or Macintosh. You have it in a disk. No one will use disk anymore. Even my PC has no drive anymore. You're using any storage like a USB storage or such, or download it from the internet and install it. So it's a software. It's not an infrastructure to be used as a service. It's a software that we can use it as a service, but it can also control and distribute Physical resources, yes, it can do that. And services as a hardware controller, it can also control hardware. Okay, so what role does a hypervisor provide? The main role that we studied in chapter 1 definitely was C, which we can use. So C is the most correct and corresponding question, answer to be chosen for question number 4. We have only 20 questions today, so we have finished almost quarter of them. Which technology must be implemented to configure network device monitoring? Can I monitor by syslog? Yes. Can I monitor devices by NetFlow? No, we can only monitor flow and take some statistics. Can I monitor by IPSLA? You will have to use multiple annoying commands that will not give you a really brief and good answer, but IPSLA is there meant to take reaction, immediate reaction instead of you. And we did implement lab for NetFlow and lab for SLA, lab for syslog, all of them in the core, in the Cisco Enterprise Core course on this channel in English. All of those 3 were in chapter 4 with their labs. And finally, can I use SNMP for monitoring? Yes. So I use either syslog or SNMP for monitoring, with the highest security killing syslog, because only SNMP v3 here is the version of a protocol that uses key like MD5 hashing key to encrypt data before sending them from the SNMP agent to the SNMP server. And thus SNMP v3 is the only secured way that you can use to monitor your devices. What is a function of a server? Okay, it transmits packets between hosts in the same broadcast domain. That is a switch. It provides shared applications to end users. Definitely, we can just think about a server in that way. That's it. It routes, does not route, leave it. Okay, it creates security zones. That is a firewall, and you will enjoy the security chapter of the Cisco Enterprise Core course, because a lot of details regarding zones and security and firewalls are there. Even designing topics we have talked about. Okay, so B is the only acceptable answer that represents a function of a server in the network. Refer to the exhibit. Which type of config is this? Cisco SPF. Okay, there's a bracket with a quote, some string, column, other stuff. Okay, with this, what was that named in English? I forgot about it. Holocaust and another one, and finally a bracket closing. So all of those are on the left side, a quote and other things on the right side, and closed with a bracket just like it was opened on a bracket. So I believe this is a JSON coding. Okay, if you have more experience in that, please inform me if it was not JSON. A security port violation has occurred on a switch port due to the maximum MAC address count being exceeded. Which command must be configured to increment the violation count so that it would increase like 1, 2, 3, 4 when you show this one? And forward an SNMP trap. Not the shutdown, not the access. I believe it was the protect, if I'm not mistaken. We did answer such question before. I believe it was like in June or July or April. We did that, and we did answer that correctly when we had the output showing on the right based on the question. But if you remember something better than me, please inform me. Which spanning tree enhancement avoids the learning and listening states and immediately places the port in the forwarding port fast? If you have multiple switches that are, let's say, connected in a closed ring topology, meaning that you will definitely need spanning tree protocol with their election. In that case, my dears, what will happen is that whenever there is a trigger in the BPDUs and regarding the layer 2 or whatever changes between the port states, a new election will happen. And when a new election happens, it will either take 50 seconds, 20 to 50 seconds if it was a common spanning tree, classic spanning tree, or up to 6 seconds if it was the rapid spanning tree, 802.1s. In that case, you might have one of the switches has a single port connected to a VIP customer which accepts no outage at all. So we need to make that port always in the forwarding state. No matter what happens, just stick with the forwarding state. Don't look back. Don't give a care about the listening and learning and whatever. So I need to configure this specific port to become a port fast. In that way, I will guarantee that it will always be in the forwarding state. It will always skip the listening and learning, no matter how many elections happens every minute or hour or such. Okay, so B would be the only correct answer for question number 9. 10. What are two functions of a layer 2 switch? That should be a piece of cake. Acts as a central point of association for association and authentication for servers or services. Makes no sense. Selects the best route, no routes between networks, no routes. Okay. Move packets within a VLAN. Yes. Question: packet? Are you sure it's a packet? We can be sure of that or certain. Why? Because a switch or a router will always receive the frame. They will see a frame coming like a train, but inside the frame there will always be a packet encapsulated. And thus, when I say there is a packet, is there a packet floating between VLANs? Yes, there will be packets floating between VLANs, and that packet is encapsulated inside a frame. One making sense example will be two computers connected to a switch. Those computers have IP addresses. So when a computer sends to another, it will have a destination IP address. Where will the destination IP address be? In a packet. Where will that packet be? Encapsulated in a frame. And that frame is flowing, or yes, flowing. You can say flowing. Okay, what was the word? I'm sorry. Yes, that frame is moving within the same VLAN. So C is correct, and it can be performed by a layer 2 switch. Move packets between different VLANs? No, not a layer 2 device at all. It should be a layer 3 device, either a layer 3 switch, and we did that in the extra 3 videos of this course, of the CCNA complete course. We had the 3 extra videos at the end. One of them used a layer 3 switch with the SVI method. The other one has used a router with an ROAS. So you will need, so D will never be correct. Makes forwarding decisions based on MAC addresses of packet. Okay, packets do not carry MAC addresses, but it will definitely be encapsulated in a frame, and that frame have the destination MAC address. Only CNE are applicable to be chosen for this question. Question number 11. A manager asks a network engineer to advise. Okay, can you please raise the salary first? Okay. A manager asks a network engineer to advise which cloud service models are used, so employees do not have to waste their time installing, managing, and updating software which is only used occasionally. Which cloud service model does the engineer recommend? The engineer should recommend the type of services that is used, so that it will control all the computers of the guys and the employees in the network, manage them, update their softwares, protect them, install some applications for them, and remove others. And that way, using an infrastructure physical devices for that? No. Using an platform device for that? No. Leave this long line, because software as a service is the correct here. SaaS is the one correct here, not PaaS, not IaaS. It's the SaaS what we use. We will use a software installed on the cloud on a remote hardware device to remotely access all the devices and manage them. So this is a software as a service. Question number 12. Which two functions are performed by the most fastest layer in the network in a 3-tier architecture, where we will have a core always connected to a distribution, always connected to accesses, etc. So we will have, this is the 3-tier architecture. What is the function of the core? Core must be the most expensive, best, most fast, capable device in the network, because it should provide uninterrupted forwarding services immediately. And policing should be done on the distribution. Direct connectivity to end users, definitely these are the access guys. Ensure timely data transfer between layers, the distribution, there is a bottleneck between the layers. And inspect packets for malicious activity. Why? Because at the core site there are mostly the security devices installed there. Whether you have an IPS, whether you have an IDS, whether you have a firewall, whether you have a next generation firewall, all of those, the email analyst, the web analyst, ESA, WSA, all of those should be at the core site. So A and E are correct for question number 12. When using a rapid PVST plus, which creates a tree per VLAN, which command guarantees, and it's a rapid, which command guarantees this a switch will definitely be the root bridge for a VLAN 200 by giving the lowest priority. So an enormous big priority like 614,000 and such, there is no such number in Cisco because you will have to take a 4 out of here. Okay, and this is how we'll find it, the number reasonable. So this cannot be, and this is a high number that will make sure that your switch will never become the root bridge, because it's the highest number when you pick when you choose a priority. Priority 0 is the correct one. Priority blah 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 is incorrect. How much is that? 38 million. There is no such number that can be typed in Cisco devices when it comes to priorities. Root primer is also correct, but we need to choose one. Based on Cisco recommendation, to avoid any flapping that can happen between multiple devices acting as root bridge for the same VLAN, don't use the root primary command. It works, don't use the root primary command. Use root priority 0. This is the most recommended one, and it caused me nightmares back then when I had multiple switches flapping, all of them claiming that I am the root bridge of VLAN 316, and I was like, this ring has 11 switch and I have to SSH to all of them and to display all the information about this specific VLAN. How is this VLAN moving? When you say like the command, when you issue the command in a layer 2 switch of Cisco, show spanning tree VLAN 360 or show spanning tree VLAN 200, what will happen is that it will show you all the ports, the physical ports participating in the tree election of this VLAN. In the end, it will tell you the role or the status of every port. Okay, so the forwarding one will be directly heading to the designated port of the root, and I keep SSHing from one to the other and comparing the MAC addresses. In the end, I have found 2 root bridges for VLAN 316, both of them saying I'm the root bridge. What made you the root bridge? One of them had the root priority 0 command, the other one had the primary. So it killed me. So I had to remove the root primary because it was fighting with the other switch, both of them claiming that I'm the root priority, I'm the root bridge for this VLAN. It's not Cinderella, it's a VLAN. Okay, so B will only be the correct answer for this one. Would be the most recommended answer. I'm sorry for this question. 14. What are 2 functions of a server on a network? Okay. Achieves redundancy by exclusively using virtual server clustering, and by clustering I mean having 2 devices acting as one device, really one device. It will be advertised to the network as only one device that has double resources. Okay, but it's actually inside. You will go to the site, to the data center, and you'll see them. They are 2 devices that have some connectivity of direct connections between them. This is the clustering thing. Can servers behave in this way? Yes, they can. So this answer might be correct. Runs applications that send and retrieve data for a workstation that make the request. Definitely correct, like a DHCP server. There are some requests, there are some answers from those workstations, and I, as a DHCP server, will respond and receive. Handles requests from multiple workstations at the same time. That poor guy is receiving 1000 discovery DHCP message from the network. This can happen. Runs the same operating system in order to communicate with other servers. I am not sure of that. And housed solely in a data center that is dedicated to a single client. Not most recommended. No, not in that way. This is not really true. So D and E are wrong. A is not to be chosen today. B and C are the basic our understandings when someone asks you about a server. 6 questions to go. What is the primary function of a layer 3 device? Route between different broadcast domains. To analyze traffic, drop unauthorized traffic from the internet. This is a security device. A security device will definitely be a layer 3 device. When you buy a firewall, and I have talked a lot about that in chapter 5, next generation firewalls, security design in the Cisco Enterprise Core course on this channel. But when we talk about a layer 3 device, the basic idea for a CCNA engineer is to think about router and the layer 3 switch. That's it. You should not think about firewall now. Leave firewall aside. Okay. To transmit wireless traffic between hosts, no. To pass traffic between different networks, the definite correct answer. And forward traffic within the same broadcast domain, this is a switch. So we can only choose C today for question number 15. 16 says, after the election process happened, who is the root bridge here? Okay, would you mind if I took this image off, because I don't care about layer 3 ports, and let me only look about this closed square. I have 4 switches and I have a problem with my image. Opa. Okay, that should be better. So the lowest MAC address will be chosen because there is no priority mentioned here. And that should be 0C, 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 all of them. E0, 0E, 0E, 0. So E0 is bigger than 0E. That means that we should take these two off. So we have 0C, the same, matching, 0E, matching, 15, matching, 22, and 1D. What do you think? Which one is smaller here? Should we do some calculations or just go with 1D? I will go with 1D. I think 1D would be the lowest MAC address here, and thus I should choose C for question number 16. Okay, question number 17. An engineer requires a scratch interface. By scratch interface, I mean a new, fresh, default interface that has no config, so that I can actively attempt to establish a trunk link with a neighbor switch. So I have a port in my switch, and that port is 0, scratch, have no configuration at all. I need a single command to establish the negotiations of making a trunk link with the other side. Switch port mode trunk works. We did that in this chapter, in this course, in the CCNA course, in multiple labs, and it worked. Switch port mode dynamic desirable works as well. Switch port mode dynamic auto might not work because the other side might not be desirable, so this will be a problem. Make sure that you are always the desirable person that starts the good things. Okay, so be desirable. Switch port non-negotiate will definitely kill the negotiations of trunking. So which one should I choose? When you will start, and if you started studying the Cisco Enterprise Core course with me on this channel, we have used real Cisco images installed on virtual environments. On that time, you will find that mostly in most Cisco switches softwares, when you hit the command switch port mode trunk, it will tell you that the port status is not defined. You have to define if it was desirable or auto. So in that case, this command might not always work. It just might not. Okay, so I have to eliminate that. Sorry, it's correct, but you might need a prerequisite for it, and that prerequisite would be dynamic desirable. So make sure that you hit this command first, and B would be correct for 17. 18. What is a function of a TFTP server? A TFTP server is an FTP server that transmits using UDP instead of TCP. Transfers a backup config from a server to a switch using the username and password. Correct. This can be no problem. Okay, and since this one can be done, one note. In TFTP, sometimes you can transfer by using the IP address without the need to authenticate by username and password. Okay, So not TFTP, not, you can leave that. Transfer files between file system inside a router, no. Transfer a config file from a server to a router on a congested link, can be. You can send traffic data from a server to a router and the link have congestion, but this is a TFTP server, this is using UDP and you have a congested link, so you will only transmit the data one time and you will care never about if the data reaches the other side or not. And since it's a congested link, definitely you will lose some parts of the data while they are transmitted and the other parts will reach the other side, making them makes no sense, because they will be missing a lot of the other pieces of the puzzle. So never use a TFTP file transferring while the link is congested, never at all. Transfers iOS images from a server to a router for like firmware upgrades, and this is what we are using in real life networking outside, so we can use that. Okay, so D is the correct one here and we can rely on D for question number 18. Question number 19. What are 2 recommendations for protecting network ports from being exploited when located in an office space outside of an IT closet? How to make sure that a port would function and operate even if you are using some devices that should not be connected to it, but they are authenticated or authorized. At the same time, complete protecting them if they were not used. Configure the static ARP entry makes no sense for this question. Enable port fast is just a stupid answer, I'm sorry. What has port fast to do with those? Okay, with such a question. Implement port based authentications. This means that your device will be authenticated based on the port. So you will give credentials, the port will send the credentials to the AAA server. All of those details have been explained in detail in chapter 5 security trust sec video in the enterprise core exam. Okay, yeah, so not to CCNA level, but I have already found those in the agenda of the enterprise core and thus I made videos for them. So implement port-based authentication. This means that you will connect to whatever port you have in the network. You type your credentials. The port itself will send the credentials to the AAA server. When the AAA server replies with authenticating and authorizing, the port will authenticate itself. And once that port is authenticated, then your device is good to go and make use of it. So C is correct. Configure ports to a fixed speed. No, this has nothing to do with it. Shut down unused ports will be good so that no one will connect its devices or any strange device to a port that is unused. Okay, it's unused because we don't need it. 20 and the last question today. What is the recommended approach to avoid co-channel congestion while installing access points that use the same frequency of 2.4 gigahertz? Perhaps you are using frequency number 1, channel number 1, in all the places. So when you're installing establishing a channel between them, what should that be? That channel should be not overlapping, one non-overlapping channel like one here that carries channel number 6 with it, which is not overlapping with 1 or 1, will be good to avoid overlapping. Okay, and I hope that I did explain that correctly, just I hope so. Okay, so this will be the end of today's videos, and this should be the end of the September and October update. We should have one last video regarding November and December, and that should be published soon enough. And that's it. This will be the end of the CCNA 203.1 exam preparation questions for 2020. Okay, I hope that everything in this video was clear for you. I hope that you will find the slides of this video to be downloaded directly by a link that I always post in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you in the upcoming videos. Goodbye.